know, man. Look, I can't be the only one that's starting to notice a pattern here. Ever since Chris Paul joined the Rockets, every time he steps foot in that Staples Center, it gets real. First, it was last year against the Clippers. You know, things got a little hectic, so Chris Paul and a few other Rockets pulled up backstage like a WWE hardcore match. Things got so crazy that they had to call LAPD because Paul Blart and the rest of his security staff couldn't handle it. As a matter of fact, they should have had LAPD on call tonight because instead of throwing assists, Rondo and Chris Paul was throwing them fists. Now, I know I'm not supposed to be glorifying violence, but look, this is like the first real NBA fight since the Malice in the Palace. Cut me some slack, man. I'm hyped. Now, I'ma keep it real. Rondo's punch was vicious. But we not gonna sit here and pretend like my dog ain't just get him nominated for Best Kiss at the next MTV Movie Awards. Mwah. Hit it! Bruh, Chris Paul has more beef in LA than a 90s East Coast rapper. Be careful, cause he giving out fades like a barber. Now that I got my jokes out of the way, we can finally get to this breakdown. First of all, how did this all start? Well, James Harden was taking the ball to the rack and initiated contact with Brandon Ingram. Now, this play potentially could have been an offensive foul, but instead, Brandon Ingram was called for the foul, and James Harden went on to complete the bucket. After completing the bucket, Harden looked over to the referees and tried to signal to them that it was a continuous motion, which means the point should count. Now, frustrated with the foul call, Brandon Ingram shoves James Harden in the back, and that's what created the delay in game. As a result, Brandon Ingram was teed up for being in his feelings, and after that, instead of wanting smoke with Harden, he directed that energy to the referee. Then Lance Stevenson came to save the day, and this is how Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo came face to face. Now, initially, it looked like Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo were just having a mild conversation. It didn't look too serious or anything like that. But then, Rajon Rondo spit in the face of Chris Paul, and if you read Chris Paul's lips, you can see him say, "Don't you ever spit on me." Because of these camera angles, I'm not 100% sure what Chris Paul did to Rajon Rondo. I can't tell if it's an eye rake or just a clean mush. But either way, Rondo wasn't having it, and he busted him in his with that sharp left hand like Conor McGregor. FYI, I want to apologize for some of the dimensions of these videos because I was just trying to find the best clips to where you can see a close-up of the fight from the best angle. And this is the best angle right here. Now, since there wasn't any kicking or slamming going on, I'm judging this fight based on boxing rules. And if you're a fan of boxing, you know that you're scored by how many clean punches you land. In order to thoroughly dissect this video, I'm slowing it down like DJ Screw. Now, we already know that Rondo's up one punch because of that clean left that he landed in the beginning. But if you look, he tries to follow up with the left again, he misses, and then he comes with the right, which is very questionable. In the sport of boxing, there's a defensive technique called a shoulder roll. Now, if you don't know what a shoulder roll is, it's pretty much when a fighter moves his shoulder in a way to deflect the punch. And in a sense, I feel like that's what Chris Paul did right here. Now, of course, Chris's shoulder roll doesn't look anywhere near as clean as a real boxer's, but that's because the guy isn't a boxer. But if you look at that slight hike in his shoulder, that forces Rondo to punch his own hand, which killed the momentum of that swing before it grazed Chris' head. So me personally, I can't label that a clean punch. Chris Paul then uses his left hand to bring Rondo's head to his waist level, pause, to make him vulnerable for the right-handed uppercut. I saw a few people questioning this uppercut because they feel as though, at best, Chris Paul grazed or tapped Rajon Rondo. But if you look at it in slow motion, Chris Paul cleanly lands the uppercut, but it may not have looked as effective because he used the knuckles on his fingers versus the ones at the top of his fist. As Rondo gets back up, the referee begins to pull on him, but at the same time, Rondo uses that right hand to grab the jersey of Chris and pulls him closer. This leads to Chris landing a vicious left hook right to the nose and mouth area. Chris would then bring Rajon Rondo back to his waist level, pause again, and pretty much have him restrained by the back of his neck until they're completely separated. And then we can't forget about Brandon Ingram sprinting full speed from half court to throw a cheap shot at Chris Paul. Now, I don't know if he landed the punch or not. Based on the camera angles, I actually think he missed, but either way, it's not relevant because this is between Rajon Rondo and Chris Paul. And the last thing I want to point out about this fight is the disadvantages of being held back. Now, some people make the argument that Rajon Rondo was made vulnerable by the referee because he was pulling him back. But if you watch the clip slowly, the referee had zero control over Rondo. He had his hands on his shoulders, tried to pull him at some point, but then he let go because Rondo was so amped up he had zero control over his body. On the opposite side, and I'm giving you this as a reminder, the left hook that Chris Paul landed on Rajon Rondo was in fact Rajon Rondo's fault. Because if you watch, as Chris Paul tries to gain momentum for that punch, LeBron James, who's the strongest person on the court, restrains him around his shoulder, which means if Rondo wasn't pulling Chris Paul forward, giving him momentum for that punch, there's a good chance that Paul either would have missed or the punch would have been ineffective altogether. With all that being said, if I had to declare a winner of this fight, it would without a doubt be Chris Paul. And that's not based on some personal bias because I'm a Rockets fan, but it's based on the fact that after the initial punch, Chris Paul completely controlled the fight. He had 2 clean punches of his own, and he had Rondo restrained before they were separated. So that's pretty much how I would judge this fight, but then again, people have different opinions. So if you see something that I don't see, leave a comment below. You can always leave your opinion. I'm always open to hearing new things. And I know it's going to be that person like, why are you guys making a big deal out of this? It was like a 5-second fight. Bruh, this was so lit. We haven't seen a real fight in so long in the NBA. And besides, everybody on social media had opinions on who won. So I just thought it would be fun to give you guys my opinion and break down this fight. So like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.
It's only entertainment.